Yes.
Okay, got it.
Perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Perfect. That's great. Okay, so you guys got to see the harbor seals out here. I mentioned the gold rush earlier. So before the gold rush happened, and what is credited with bringing a lot of people to the Bay Area and to the West Coast was what was called the fur rush. So I introduced the idea earlier in the talk of legacies, long-lasting impacts of our actions, and also changing ideas over time, right? So before we had a protected habitat for the harbor seals, the marine mammals were hunted almost to extinction, near extinction on the Pacific coast. From Alaska to Baja, California, the harbor seals, the sea lions, the foxes, any animal that had fur, sea otters, beavers were hunted till they were gone. At the same time that was happening, the whales were hunted. The Pacific population of whales was decimated during the whaling bonanza. This is a picture of a humpback whale. We got to see humpback whales out here all week. So hopefully today, fingers crossed, one will pop up. And at the same time that was happening, the old growth redwood forests were logged. 95% of the old growth redwood forests were logged. Only 5% of them remain. You can go to Muir Woods. It's amazing. So we think about the legacy of these people from the 1800s, and all this was going on while the lighthouse was being built. And I see these pictures and I say, what were they thinking, right? Like, what were they thinking? Well, a couple different things they were thinking. One was that they really believed nature was infinite. They thought there was millions of whales and millions of trees, and no matter what they did, they could not make an impact. They didn't know, right? They're also driven by greed and other factors, but they really believed nature was infinite, and no matter what they did, they couldn't have an impact. So when I think about these things now, how would we feel if we walked down here today and they were clubbing the seals down here, or if there was a harpoon boat out here in the bay hunting a whale, or if you went to Muir Woods and they were logging these trees? Our ideas have changed, right? Our ideas have changed because we have more information now and we want to do better for nature. So that's kind of a theme I want to start talking about here, and introduce the idea of being a part of the ecosystem versus being dominant on the ecosystem, right? You think about the attitudes that people have towards nature, they can really destroy nature when they feel like this is mine, right? And what can we do to kind of become more of a part of the ecosystem? And this is where I want to introduce the next part of the talk. I'm going to talk about some environmental challenges we're facing. And I feel like no matter who you are or where you're from, nature is the great equalizer. Who doesn't love to stand next to the ocean, the mountains, a forest, and just have that moment of awe and wonder? And this is an amazing place to come out here with an open mind and an open heart and just have nature do its wonders, because the beauty out here is incredible. And it can give you that sense of like appreciation for nature. So, but before I begin any talk about the ecosystem, I like to talk about the economy, because most you know this.
Oh yeah.
Most people are on kind of one extreme or the other, but I want to bring everyone together with a talk that shows the importance of an ecosystem for our economy. So, Limits to Growth, you know about it. Came out in 1972, same year I was born once again. And they studied what is happening with planetary resources. And they really wanted to find out is can we grow our economies infinitely? This is the goal, to raise the Dow Jones infinitely, to raise our economies infinitely. Is this possible? Based on the fact that we have limited planetary resources. So they came up with all these different scenarios in 1972. It was published by MIT. 50 years later, it was studied again by KPMG, one of the largest accounting firms, published in the Yale Journal of Industrial Ecology. And what they found is that what they predicted in 1972, we are precisely on course for this to happen. In the next decade, industrial output and food production is going to drop dramatically, because we don't have enough fresh water for industrial production. We can't make the goods we need. We don't have enough fresh water to grow crops. We don't have enough food to eat. So we need a healthy ecosystem for our economies and for us to survive. It all is tied together. So now I just want to talk about a couple things. Now, the first thing is, everything I'm going to talk to you guys about today is not cyclical, right? People like to argue about environmental things, saying, well, the earth goes through cycles. It's true. The earth has gone through major cycles. Each of those major cycles is marked by a mass extinction. It's important to remember that. But all of these cycles have happened. But what I'm talking about today is not cyclical. Nothing I'm going to show you guys has ever happened before, and you can simply look this stuff up. It's not debated. It's very simple. First thing I want to talk about is the ocean and the pollution in the ocean. This is called the Great Pacific Garbage Patch. 300 miles of plastic floating out, not just in the Pacific, but all over the oceans. Why does that matter? Because we get 70% of the oxygen we breathe from the ocean. The ocean covers 70% of the earth. We need healthy oceans for us to survive. The other problem with the oceans is acidification. Animal agriculture produces lots of runoff. It goes into the ocean and creates dead zones, nutrient depletion. So these are concerns with the ocean. Now, if we switch to land, you guys have heard of the World Wildlife Fund. They got this cute little panda bear. World Wildlife Fund does a lot of really amazing work. They do a study every year called the Living Planet Index. And what they look at is how much biodiverse wildlife is left on Earth. And what they found in the last 50 years is a 70% reduction in biodiverse wildlife, just in the last 50 years. They count all the mammals, birds, amphibians, reptiles, and fish, and have found a 70% reduction just in the last 50 years. It's being called the Holocene extinction. Once again, you can look this up. This has been reported in all the major news networks. National Geographic has a slide here showing the rates of extinction we're currently looking at are 1,000 times greater than in any other mass extinction event in the past. The difference between other mass extinctions and this one is that this mass extinction is being caused by a species that's never happened before, and unfortunately, the species is us. Why is it happening? One of the main reasons is the way we're using land. So I talked about the oceans, the land, the rainforests are being logged at 80,000 acres per day for animal agriculture, to raise crops and to graze animals. And I got a little chart here. The Living Planet Index did a study, and what they looked at was all the mammals on the earth. They put them into three categories: farm animals, humans, and biodiverse wildlife. So if we look at biodiverse wildlife, meaning all mammals on the planet that are wild animals, who wants to take a guess at what that percentage is? You guessing small? It's 4%. 4% is all of the wildlife that is mammals, 36% is humans, and 60% of all mammals on Earth are farm animals.
Counted by number, counted by weight, counted
by number.
Number.
Yeah,
okay.
yep. Living beings. So yeah. So.
And this is mammals?
Mammals, yes.
Mammals.
Not including birds. Birds, about 70% are farm animals.
Okay.
Only 30% are actual wild. So why is this happening? The big problem is land use. So we don't have a whole lot of land on Earth. Right. This chart is confusing, so I came up with a little way to make it easier. We don't have a whole lot of land on Earth, and what we're doing with the land is the concern. So to help everybody get a visual, I came up with a little show and tell.
Excellent.
This is our Earth. Beautiful Earth here. As I said, 70% of the Earth is ocean. 70% of our oxygen comes from that ocean. So that doesn't leave us a whole lot of land. We got about this much land. 30% of the Earth is actual land. This is a 10-foot rope, so I measured it out the best I could. Of that 30%, as you mentioned, this much is barren land, ice caps and deserts and beaches, places where you can't live or grow food. So that gives us about this much actual land to use on Earth. What we do with this land is what's causing the problem. Half of the land we have available for us, we use for animal agriculture. This is the most destructive thing we can do with the land we have because of the water that goes into this. 1/3 of all fresh water goes into raising animals and growing crops. We grow enough crops to feed 10 billion people, but 50% of those crops go to the animals, right? So we don't have a whole lot of land, and what we're doing with the land is the problem. This is the most destructive thing we can do with the land. Okay, now I'm gonna get to the solution. Before you guys all walk off and say this ranger sucks, there is a solution, and it's not news. People have known about this for a long time, but nobody wants to hear it. I grew up in Texas. I worked at a barbecue house. I know nobody wants to hear it. It's a dietary shift,
Yep.
right?
Absolutely.
And the people, this is the challenging thing because we all like to do what we like to do. But I have, this is the slide I want to show you guys. The United Nations, along with tons of other reputable organizations and schools and scientists, have all come together. Oxford University said avoiding meat and dairy is the single biggest way to reduce your impact on the Earth. The United Nations, Oxford, Cambridge, Stockholm University, NYU, Harvard, Princeton, Stanford, by cutting out meat and dairy, we could reduce our land use by 75%, right? What that looks like on a slide is this. 2 football fields feed 1 person on an animal-based diet. 2 football fields feeds 14 people on a plant-based diet. I gotta use the string one more time to show you the graphic on that. So here's the earth once again. Here's how much land we actually have. This is habitable land. This is land we're using for animal agriculture. If we switch to plant-based diet, we would only need this much land for the entire world to survive on food. We could reforest all of that, let it grow back to grasslands. Regenerative farming is a big thing now. They're talking about ways to reduce the impact. Regenerative farming would reduce this a little bit. Grass-fed beef, those types of things would reduce this a tiny bit short term, but then it would grow. And what they have found that by 2050, we're gonna need a country twice the size of India for animal agriculture. This, as the population grows to 9 billion, we need even more land. So we gotta make a shift go in this direction. More good news is that it's happening, right? This is happening worldwide. I got a little chart here from Bloomberg Financial showing that the plant-based food market has gone from 30 to 60 billion in the last couple of years, and by the end of this decade is expected to be at 160 billion. But that it's growing rapidly all over the world. This is happening. Systemic change always happens when people take personal accountability for their own actions, right? Any change that's happened is when people take responsibility. So the good news is this is growing dramatically. Countries like Germany, Australia, the UK, the Nordic countries, Sweden are way ahead of us. It's growing very quickly over there. But the statistics say that 500% increase in plant-based diets, even in the United States, in the last 10 years. This is the fastest growing lifestyle, according to what they say, the fastest growing lifestyle in history, because people are becoming aware of this information. So I talked with you guys about legacy. That was the topic that I started at the top of the trail, the long-lasting impacts of our actions, and what is our legacy going to be, right? People change their ideas over time about harvesting the seals and hunting the whales and cutting down the trees. It's now time for us to change our idea about our footprint on the planet. We have a national park where we protect the animals and we protect the land in the national park. As a park ranger, I love nature. I think we need to adopt an idea that the whole earth needs to be a national park. We need this place for her kids' kids, right? We need to protect these places so that we can survive as a species, because the way we're going is destroying our ecosystem. So the topic was, what is our legacy? And what I want to challenge you guys to do now is, what is your legacy going to be, right? What are you going to do now that you have this information? I hope you guys go home and watch some documentaries and Google, search, whatever you're questioning. I'm going to stand here open to conversations afterwards. There's an old joke about the ostrich that sticks its head in the sand and pretends nothing's happening. This is what most of us want to do, but I don't want us to be remembered as that. We can make a difference, and we need to make a difference. And to hit you guys with a couple inspiring quotes at the end, Gandhi has a great quote: be the change, right? Don't wait for change to happen. Change doesn't come from the top down. They got the power up top. The control is here. We make a decision. We live in a supply and demand economy. We vote with our dollars. Whatever you want to see more of, you buy that. You vote for what you want with your dollars, right? And Einstein has a great quote. I love to finish up the talk with Einstein. He really nails it, because he says we live in an optical delusion that is a prison of the mind. And this prison of the mind causes us to only care for those that are our closest relatives, our closest friends, everybody else, whatever. And the challenge is to free ourselves from that mind and to find compassion for all beings. It's a big task, but it ties in well with this idea of shifting from an ego type idea with nature to an eco type idea, right? So I really appreciate you guys taking the time to hang out with me today. This stuff is not easy to listen to. I know that. I appreciate you guys hanging out and listening. And if you have any questions, come on up. I'm happy to talk. Thanks so much. Right on. Thank you.
Keep going, or?
That's good. You can stop there.